The president of Iran is locked in a war of words with President Trump. Trump warning if Iran retaliates, the U.S. will quickly and fully strike back, he says. He's even threatening to hit cultural targets. Iran's president warning never threaten the Iranian nation. As they escalate the tension, others are trying to cool it down.
This cauldron of tensions is leading more and more countries to take unpredicted decisions with unpredictable consequences and the profound risk of miscalculation.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was briefed today by the Chief of Defence Staff and the Defence Minister, saying the safety and well-being of Canadians in the region is our top priority, and we'll keep monitoring the situation closely and encouraging de-escalation. NATO announced it has suspended the Canadian-led training operation in Iraq. As Redmond Shannon reports in our top story tonight, the world is waiting to see how far Iran will take its threats of revenge.
Iran's supreme leader in tears, Ali Khamenei, the face of a nation's grief. Underneath the wailing is anger. A country that recently saw a deadly crackdown on anti-government protests is now more united in outrage. State TV said there were millions, but at the very least, hundreds of thousands lined Tehran's streets for Qassem Soleimani's funeral. Soleimani's daughter Zainab addressed the crowd. "Crazy Trump," she said. "Don't think that everything is over with my father's martyrdom." Russia is calling the killing a violation of international law. The US president says any retaliation by Iran will be met with a counterattack against culturally important sites in the country.
At our meeting today, allies called for restraint and de-escalation. A new conflict would be in no one's interest.
NATO is gently taking the side of its most powerful member nation.
We agree Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. We share concern about Iran's missile tests. And we are united in condemning Iran's support for a variety of different terrorist groups.
With Britain, France and Germany looking to resuscitate the crumbling Iran nuclear deal, NATO is treading a diplomatic tightrope.
I think it's extraordinarily tricky, especially because there's other members of the alliance that have been part of the nuclear agreement with Iran that the United States pulled out of, much to the others' dismay.
Canada is commanding the temporarily suspended NATO mission in Iraq. The country's two foreign ministers spoke on Monday. A statement for François-Philippe Champagne said a de-escalation in tensions is necessary as peace and stability are key to pursuing the political and economic reforms underway in Iraq. But after Iraq's parliament passed a non-binding vote to kick US troops out of the country, the future of Canadian troops could be uncertain too.
That's a pretty strong indicator that the Western forces, or at least the United States, that they don't want us there, at least for the time being.
Soleimani will be buried in his hometown on Tuesday. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Let's go to our Washington bureau now and Jackson Proskow. Jackson, President Trump keeps talking tough. What's the latest from him?
Well, frankly, Donna, a confusing day here in Washington with no public appearances from the president. He did, however, tweet that, quote, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, as though that were somehow tied to his decision to launch that targeted attack on Soleimani. The White House is, though, walking back Trump's previous comments about potentially targeting Iranian cultural sites if Iran were to retaliate. That, of course, would be a war crime. They're also trying to justify the strike as being based on credible information about an imminent threat, but there have been no details of that threat provided. And, Donna, there's a lot of confusion about if or when U.S. troops might even be pulled out of Iraq.
Jackson, President Trump has said killing this general will make the world safer. A lot of people worry that's not true and that President Trump may not have a long-term strategy. Is there any evidence he does?
No, and I think that's one of the most worrying aspects here for career analysts and observers. There are strong fears of Iranian retaliation, but no clear sense of how exactly the U.S. might respond to that. And of course, the risk is that things spiral out of control very quickly if there's no strategy for either side. Many experts believe that Iran may actually show some degree of restraint in its response because of the risks involved here.
I don't agree with people who say the Iranians are irrational. They are one of the most rational, strategic thinking governments on the earth. So that's my greatest hope right now, is that the leadership in Tehran will not be so escalatory in its response that we have to be even more escalatory.
Jackson, do we know who President Trump is listening to? Who's advising him?
At this point, it seems to be his own Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, a man who has reportedly been pushing for some sort of action on Iran for quite a while now. What's not clear, though, is how much pushback the president has received throughout this process. Remember, there have been a number of high-level departures at the Pentagon and State Department in recent months, and lawmakers, the people Trump would have to get authorization from for war, are still largely in the dark about the reasons for the original strike. The White House, though, will offer a classified briefing to U.S. senators on Wednesday. Democrats aren't waiting for that, though, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced plans today to vote on a resolution which would ultimately limit Trump's ability to carry out military action against Iran. Donna?
All right, Jackson Proskow in Washington tonight. Thanks.